We have a very, very serious situation going on overseas. Our ally, our greatest ally in the Middle East, Israel, is under siege and under attack. The organization Hamas, the governmental entity that controls Gaza, attacked them viciously, killed 1,400 people. You have co-sponsored legislation that would prevent Palestinian refugees from entering the United States of America. And I want to give you a moment to explain why you feel like this is so important. I think I get it. Explain it to Middle Tennessee.
Well, Palestinians right now are under Hamas rule in the Gaza Strip. Whether they want to be or not, we don't know. There's certainly probably innocent civilians that are involved, and they're getting an opportunity to leave the Gaza Strip. But Hamas is preventing them. They use them as human shields. They're as bad as the ISIS attacks that we've seen in Syria and Iraq over the years. And so with the wide open southern border, I hate to specify just Palestinians at this point because we don't know who's coming across their southern border. But with the protests that we see going all around the country, going on in D.C. this weekend, thousands and thousands of people protesting. Rashida Tlaib, a member of Congress, basically incited almost a riot inside the Cannon building here a week ago, propagating the false claims that Israel struck the hospital when the evidence was clear that it was not an Israeli missile. So we've got a real hotbed going on, a lot of hatred. Kamala Harris is going around the country preaching against Islamophobia. In the meantime, we're watching with our own eyes what's happened, the terroristic activities, shooting up a music festival, beheading babies. I recently saw a video of Hamas shooting its own citizens that were trying to leave Gaza, blindfolding them, kicking them to a pit, shooting them in the head one after another. Very graphic, violent behavior. And so these are the type of people that know they can simply walk across the southern border, and until we can identify and vet who people are, we need to have laws, really not just in place for Palestinians, but anyone crossing the southern border. Right now, with the heightened awareness and threat that's going on, I think it's extremely important that we vet this particular group that we know has anti-American sentiment and anti-Israel.
Well, and Scott, I applaud your effort to do this from a legal perspective, and I know the bill would require the Department of Homeland Security to implement a pause on, quote, all visas, refugee status, and granting of asylum for people who hold a passport by the Palestinian Authority. I am sad to note that it's almost a quaint notion that you would engage in attempting to get this measure passed, considering the porous nature of the southern border. I mean, it's sad that we compare your desire to limit who can come in legally. And I would say to you, how much does that matter, Scott, when the dang southern border is so wide open? All they got to do is walk in, say, I'm an asylum seeker, and the Biden administration just lets them in.
Yeah, it's really the travesty of our times. I cannot remember in my lifetime anything so blatant and destructive as what's going on at the southern border. Speaker Mike Johnson is new, but I think his very first act, rather than the bill we passed last week to fund support to Israel, which I supported, and I really supported because we were taking money from the IRS to do it, which drove the Democrats crazy. But the very first act should have been money to secure our own southern border. We've got to address this, put this on the Democrats, and let them tell us no, that there's not a good reason to do that when we've had 7 million people come in and over 1 million gotaways. You saw Mayorkas trying to answer questions in a hearing last week, and he just simply won't answer the questions. But we've had over 1 million gotaways, and those are the ones you worry about, the people that are trying to get into this country illegally, who are seeking asylum or are under 18. That's wrong. They shouldn't be able to do it either. But the ones that are not even trying to do that are the ones that we need to be concerned about. When you see the number of 1 million, 1.5 million gotaways, the likelihood of those being criminals is very high. The likelihood of a terrorist attack happening on our soil eminently is very high, and we should all be very, very afraid of what's going on there. And I cannot believe the Biden administration, Secretary Mayorkas, continue to turn a blind eye when even my Democratic colleagues acknowledge to me what a huge problem this is.
Before we get away from it, because I do want to ask you your thoughts on the new Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, but Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, despite her many controversial comments regarding the Palestinian/Hamas-Israel conflict. She escaped censure last week. I know you voted in favor of it. Marjorie Taylor Greene, I thought, crafted a poorly written censure. And I noted this, and it's sometimes, it's dangerous to get into the weeds in this way. But I can understand why some Republicans would have been hesitant to vote in favor of this, because the language talked about insurrection and all of these types of things. Just give us a thought on where you were and why you believed it was commentary and an activity that crossed the line for you.
Yeah, well, the vote was on a motion to table, and I voted against tabling it so we could have brought it up for a vote.
I see.
So I think that she should have been censored. I think that it was too broad the way it was written. I mean, it was pretty clear what she did. She ignored the evidence of what happened with the hospital, and she went out in the streets and shouted and fired up people, basically inciting a riot over false information. And I think that that's dangerous. That's that's what they blame Trump of doing on January 6th, even though he didn't use the language she did. So I think it should have been a tighter censor on Marjorie's part. She should have done it for just exactly what Tlaib did. I think it was a little broader than that. So there were some Republicans that voted to table the motion, and that's why it didn't move forward. But I thought if we moved it forward, we could at least narrow it down and tighten up on what she actually did wrong, because that type of behavior could have been very dangerous when we had 300 people inside the Cannon building having to be arrested and hauled out one by one. That could have turned south in a hurry.
Representative Scott DesJarlais is with us this afternoon for a few more moments, talking on his way to Huntsville, getting on a flight there to get back to Washington, D.C. Let me ask you your opinion on our newly elected Speaker, Mike Johnson. And the fact of the matter is, tick-tock, 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 only days before the 45-day window is complete. Every indication that I see, everyone that I speak with, Scott, and I've not talked to you about it, indicates that we're going to expect some sort of short-term CR. A lot of the people that I've spoken with have an expectation that CR will run into January. What say you on the matter of funding the government over the Christmas holidays?
Well, it's really interesting that we're even in this predicament. Mike Johnson's a good guy. I've known him, I guess, since he came to Congress in 2018 or whenever it was. He's a solid guy. He's thoughtful. Bottom line is, I still disagree with 8 members of the Republican Party siding with 208 Democrats to get rid of the speaker we had. Any speaker is far from perfect, but we were passing our appropriation bills, and we tried to pass a very conservative CR that had border security, 30% cuts. First CR I'd ever voted for, and it failed because 21 Republicans voted against it because they just wouldn't vote for any CR, which I understand because that was my philosophy until we had 30% cuts and border security added. So it wasn't really just the CR. And then the next day, they passed the CR that Kevin McCarthy ultimately got ousted for, allegedly. And now November 17th, that expires. Well, we're doing 2 more appropriation bills this week. We've got a total of 12 to do. I believe we'll get them done. I think the Senate will tell us to go pound sand. They don't care what we have in ours, but we can at least make the argument that this is where the Republican elected House stands on spending. But to answer your question, I think that there's going to have to be a continued resolution. I don't think shutting the government down for a month would save anything. It costs billions of dollars to do that, and when you shut down the government, it's on autopilot to the tune of 85% of the spending. So we're still going into debt during a shutdown. It's just that all the federal workers that get laid off, they ultimately always get paid anyway. So it'd be nice if we could once again attach some type of meaningful border security to the continuing resolution and force the Democrats to say that that's not a good idea. So it looks like it's going to happen, but we're going to continue to do our work and do the best we can against the Biden administration and a Democrat-held Senate to, toe the line or hold the line on spending.
Finally, Scott, Tuesday, November 5th, 2024 is Election Day. That means we're less than a year out. Do you believe that the contest, I understand people have to go to the polls and vote, but in your mind, on the Republican side of things, do we have our candidate in Donald Trump for president of the United States?
Yeah, he's got a tremendous lead. I guess the second place candidates, Nikki Haley and DeSantis, will be on the debate stage again maybe this week. We'll see how the Iowa and New Hampshire primaries go. Sometimes things change after that, but Donald Trump seems to have a commanding lead. I was very encouraged to see the poll that came out yesterday showing him leading in 5 out of 6 of the battleground states over Joe Biden. Now, that didn't factor in independent candidates, but
Man, we almost got to the end there.
Continues to falter, and so we'll see how it plays out.
Scott, thank you so much for your time. Safe travels as you head back to D.C., and do your best up there to spread some conservatism around, will you?
I will do that, and you enjoy the comedic hour coming up. I wish I might be able to listen to part of it.
Well, come on. We need it more than anything. I mean, Dusty's in the house, and we need some comedy in our lives with everything going on in Washington, D.C. and beyond. Thank you to Representative Scott DesJarlais. He's represented the 4th Congressional District since 2011.